Today, I sit down with Jen Bowles. Jen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited.
Nice. I'm excited to talk to you. You're the owner of JBO Home. I'm really interested because in the first season, a friend of mine who was on the show was like, "Hey, I really want to listen to someone who's in real estate." And so I finally get that opportunity to send them this episode and share your learnings and your experience along with them. So let's just get started and just dive into it. Like, how did you get into this crazy thing called entrepreneurship?
Oh my gosh. It's always been with me. It's one of those things that you just kind of, you want to do something for yourself and you want to do it your way, and it just always sticks with you.
Yeah.
So I started my career in interior design. And so I went to school that I've actually first started in business and decided, you know what, this is so common sense to me. I need to jump into something that I'm really passionate about. So they switched majors altogether, went into interior design, went to go work for someone who was like, I could do this better. So I opened up my own practice, right?
Right.
Only I wasn't exactly ready at the time. So I jumped into it, started doing some things, and decided, you know what? Okay, we need to learn a little bit more. So I took myself back out gracefully. I didn't have this whole booming, company, but had, just kind of just started getting into it. And so I decided that I need to know a little bit more on how things work. So I went to work for a construction company, and learned a whole lot about what I was designing, how to like execute it, right? And just some things about just regular entrepreneurship, because they were a startup company. So I saw the makings of how they got their clients, how they handled them, how they organized them, and then decided that, okay, I'm ready to jump back out and try this design thing again. And so I did. And again, I wasn't exactly ready for it. I was just in the next phase of it, but I got scared and I got in my own way. And and that happens. That
Yeah.
happens. And so you get the what do they call it when you start to kind of like doubt yourself a little bit. You get the
Imposter
phobia. Oh
syndrome.
gosh, imposter syndrome. Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. So you get the imposter syndrome, being like, oh, I don't know exactly. You might come across an instance, and that's kind of what happened to me, where I was getting deeper and deeper into it, and I was like, oh God, like, do I know what I'm doing? Do I even know what I'm doing? And coming across scenarios, I'm like, okay, I need to get back out there and learn some more. And so my ultimate dream is to be a developer for myself, right? And so I had to do all the things that led up to that. I had to start with design and kind of figure out what it is that I wanted to do. I had to hop into construction, putting myself back out there, and then decided that, I need to find out how developers work. So you need to go work for them. So I
Yeah.
worked for a big hotel developer that did like Marriott's and Hilton's and all of that. And they were a family owned company. So again, a smaller company, you kind of learn the ways that they work, but they were huge in our area. And I learned so much from them. And it so happened that COVID came around, and it forced me to get out there and start the career of real estate, because that's the next step to going
Yeah.
into development. You got to know how to buy it and sell it, and what all the deals are and what they mean and the progress of that. And so that's kind of how this all started. Yeah, and so
I love it.
it's it's been crazy. There's so much knowledge in this little head in a small amount of time, I swear. There's all these different experiences that come out of it. So long story short, that's how I got started.
I love it for so many reasons. Just because, one, like me, you got bit with that bug, that entrepreneurial bug, and you're just like, I gotta try this thing. And
Yeah.
I think what's also exciting about it is you tried it at different stages, right?
Yes.
Another guest you mentioned it's super smart to learn on someone else's dime. And it was
Yes.
as if you tried it, you realized what went wrong, you went and learned on someone else's dime. You tried it, it didn't work. You know, like that is like such an incredible and smart way to do it. And every single time you went through it, you kind of learned, and now you're here, right? And now you're at the pinnacle of kind of the process that you're trying to put together. So that's pretty awesome.
Exactly. And it's those things. It's like you surround yourself by those people who've done it before and who know what they're doing. You learn pieces from them. There is so much knowledge in that in every experience. So yeah, absolutely.
So you talked about how you always wanted to be an entrepreneur and kind of work for yourself. I'm
Yeah.
curious, where did that come from? When you were growing up as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So, to be honest, the president. I needed to save the world. I don't know what it was. It just, I had to lead something. I had to be creative. And I think it's the creative part, creating some, I don't know, some kind of like visual or some kind of like pathway for people to follow. I think that's really what drew me into wanting to be my own boss or to be my own person or to lead something and show people how to do it. So I guess the president somehow does that. In my mind as a kid, I was like, I'm going to teach everyone how to do great. Save the world. There's a problem to solve. There's always a problem to solve. And I loved being creative and coming up with creative ways. Things didn't make sense to me the way that they were just like laid out, like you need to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, but why? Like, why can't we do it this way? Or why can't we change it up? So as a kid, I kind of, wanted to go in that direction. Obviously, that didn't pan out. And I'm glad that it didn't because that is a big job. That's a whole other slew of things. So, yeah, but as a kid, I was just always, wanting to create things. And I think that
Yeah.
that kind of turns into wanting to have things your way or making your version of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious about your coming from a place where you wanted to lead and you wanted to kind of run things your own way and help solve a specific problem, and the various instances where you've done that as an entrepreneur. I'm very curious about what your first action was the first time you tried to be an entrepreneur versus
Yeah.
this time now, which is I think what your third stint running your own business. I'm curious of what the difference of behavior was.
Yeah, sure. So when you first get out there and you're first doing it, you kind of think you know everything, you just jump right into it. So I just said, all right, I'm going to come up with the business name, I'm going to come up with the logo, this is what it is. And you kind of fake it till you make it in the beginning. So you always have to train your mindset, no matter what stage in entrepreneur it is, or entrepreneurship it is that you got to act the part, right? So you got to kind of dress the part and speak the language and kind of learn different things about the industry that you're going in. And so I just immersed myself in there as if I had already been like a big design firm. And I had to learn like what pricing was, how to price and how to like write a contract for people. And to the branding was the first part because you had to recognize yourself as somebody, right? And so
Right.
when I first started out, it was the big getting it perfect. Do you know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
perfect logo, the perfect name, the perfect branding, the perfect way that it presented. And so when you first start out in entrepreneurship, it's that what you think it should be, and that's the acting the part, right? There's a
Yeah.
certain aesthetic of whatever field you're going into. And so when I first started out, I pretended I was this firm like type of business, and
Yeah.
I wasn't. I didn't have the support or the setup for that. Going into it now, you forget all that. You say, it's okay. This is my logo. This is my name. You know what I mean? This is what I'm doing. It's about your service, how you're servicing people and how you're helping solve a problem and taking action to it. There's less ego in it this time around than there was in the beginning. And it always starts that way. And you got to kind of test it out and kind of feel it out. But the second time or the third time around, you kind of, what is it that I want to do? Just go do it. Be imperfect. Don't worry about trying to fit in this little box and kind of just move forward.
I
If that makes
absolutely
sense.
love that.
That went everywhere.
No, I absolutely love that just because for many reasons, but one of the main reasons is because I myself am like a perfectionist. And I know I'm a perfectionist that knows perfection doesn't exist. And
Yeah.
that feeling, like you said, of imposter syndrome is really tough. And when you first dive into a space where you're new and you're the newcomer, there is this vulnerability that kind of sinks in where you're just like, no, they're not going to see me sweat. They're gonna know that I got my stuff together and I deserve to be here, which is good from a confidence perspective. But it's also kind of paralyzing because now you can't just test and learn, and you can't, embrace the getting it wrong. So
Right.
no, I absolutely love that. That was the thing that you saw the differences. It's like, this time I don't even care. I'm not faking it. Like, just try it. If it
Yeah.
works, it doesn't work.
Exactly. And you just gotta go out there. Nobody knows what they're doing. The truth is, nobody knows what they're doing. You
Yeah.
might be a professional in your industry and know the specifics in your industry, but as far as everything else, nobody really knows. And the more you embrace that and just go with it, people want to know you as a person, your brand, your ethics, what you stand for, what you're going to do for them, and how you're going to carry that. That's all people really care about and want to do business with. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so, you know, what you just touched upon about it kind of paralyzing you, you know what I mean? It's like you got to take a step back. And sometimes when I was in that first stage and talking about that, you'll over talk, you'll over make yourself seem qualified because you're trying to validate your presence on the stage. And as you kind of get more comfortable in what you do, you don't have to do that anymore. People
Right.
just know. You just say, I do this, and they trust in that you do that.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
when you first start off, you'll find yourself doing that or telling these stories, and you don't need to as you kind of go on.
Yeah. I'm curious how much of that, I'll just call it that quiet confidence that you have now, how much of that has come from the experience you gained when you kind of work for some of these companies and you started building your network and your relationships within those spaces? How much of that was just a product of, no, I've been in these rooms before, and like, I know these people, and these people have, given me the game of how this works.
Yeah. So, I mean, it a lot comes from there because that's the experience, that's the knowledge that you hold, and what your confidence in what you're doing. So,
Yeah.
and even if you haven't done it and you haven't been in those spaces, it's where you put your mind, right? So if you had never been in those spaces before, but you're watching YouTube and you're learning through what people are saying and you're applying it, or you're going through some of that coursework, and you don't have to buy the really expensive shiny courses that they sell, but you're taking the small little nuggets that they throw out there. They throw out a lot of information in those, and
Yeah.
it's just taking some of that and then learning some of that yourself, because you got it. But it either being in the room or taking those small pieces of information yourself does play a huge part in that, and you got to trust in it.
Yeah. Listen, the book of YouTube is the greatest thing ever. It's the greatest thing
Yes.
ever.
Oh,
Like, I
yes.
I subscribe to YouTube Premium. I was like, take these ads because
Yes, don't you? Yeah.
videos. I love it.
Yeah. It's honestly like, if I were to have gone back in all my experience of like college and whatnot, I would not have done college. I would have saved that for like a car or a house or just savings. Okay. So college is a whole other thing, but I would have just have done YouTube. YouTube wasn't what it was
Yeah.
then that it
Yeah.
is now. And now there's other platforms too. Like one of my biggest, kind of go-tos is between YouTube and TikTok. And I know people give TikTok this big thing. I know it. But I am telling you, these if you skip past all the fluff and you get to the trades that you really want to know about, like for instance, I had to video edit. I had to do some videography. My videographer that I hired didn't work out, so I had to learn it myself. I was under pressure. I had to figure it out. I literally had to download software and figure it out step by step. And YouTube and TikTok. TikTok guided me to who to find on YouTube, what
Mm.
to look for, and kind of, I'm not exactly a professional in it. I still suck at it. It's okay. but they guide you to what you need to know in the short term. So those platforms honestly are huge. And if I could go back to it, I would have self-taught myself from the beginning,
Yeah.
because that's where the value is. You have to try it and do it yourself to really
Yeah.
learn what works, what doesn't. And you don't have to be like the best at it, but it's
Yeah.
a starting point. So YouTube is so powerful on so many levels.
You're so right. And I've read a couple articles recently about how TikTok is essentially trying to position themselves as the next search engine, which
Yes,
is really
it's true.
interesting. It's really, really
Yeah,
interesting because,
and
I mean,
scary.
and yeah, and terrifying.
It's scary. Yeah.
But like, as someone who's a little nerdy about business and the tech space, like
Mhm.
it's hard to imagine a world where Google gets supplanted as the tech search engine. It's hard to imagine where YouTube gets, Google gets supplanted as the video search engine. But the bite-sized video search engine, that seems really interesting, right? And like you said, like I'm not on TikTok that much. The podcast, I'm trying to get it more on TikTok, but
Yeah.
there are these like small little snippets where you're just like, I didn't know you could do that with your phone. Ooh, I didn't know
Yes.
that I could. I didn't know that I could fix my plumbing like that. Like it's just these small
Yes.
things. It's like,
They're
yeah,
so helpful. It's so helpful. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but TikTok, I mean, there's this other powerful thing about it is that it comes from real people. You don't have this huge pushing of commercialized consumerism at you, buy this, do this. It's people doing real stuff like
yeah,
those life hacks, right? That are so
yeah.
you're like, oh my God. There was a cup holder one where, when you go to McDonald's and you have, or Dunkin' Donuts, and there's like, we have Dunkin' Donuts here. We're up in New England, but so I don't think Starbucks does it or not. I'm not sure, but the cup holders that you have that have like the four, you actually put them. They're supposed to be so you put them in your cup holder,
I saw
and
that.
then mind blown, mind blown. This silliest thing, but yes. But honestly, before I go to look on a Google, because all that comes up is ads in the first paid page, right? So I'm like, I don't want to know that. Like, what's the free website to something? What's the, where can I find like free audio books or
Yeah,
whatever it is? Where can I find information that isn't backed by bigger companies? And Google ad space is huge. And if you're an entrepreneur, it is a really great tool to push branding for people to be able to find you, because that's what everyone does first, because not everyone is acclimated to TikTok yet. But the younger generation, those millennials, right? That's the first thing that they're looking at. That's the first place that they go to. So
yeah,
it's interesting how things are shifting.
yeah. No, you're spot on, and I'm curious. Just as we we're both millennials. I think we know that
Yeah.
about ourselves.
Can I ask you a question though?
Yes.
The millennial, do you deny your millennialism? Do you get a little like, offended? You're like, I'm not. I know what a
No,
beeper is.
listen.
I know what the rolling up windows is. Okay, don't call me.
I'll be honest. I'm a proud millennial, but I do get defensive on the annoying aspects of our generation
Mm-hmm.
because all of my siblings are, my closest siblings 8 years older than me. And so,
Yeah.
I know a typewriter. I know the roll up windows. I know,
Right.
MS DOS. I know the 8.5 floppy disk. So like there are a lot of things that, I remember growing up that as a millennial, typical millennial, you like, oh, you don't know anything about that. So I am prickly about that, but I have accepted that um millennials were arguably the greatest generation. I'm
We
going to
are.
steal that term just because we've seen the world and the analog world, and we've seen kind of this transition to the internet, and then we've seen the
Right.
transition to social media. And so um, I'm curious, as a fellow millennial, your your comfort with the digital world, right?
Yeah.
um, as an entrepreneur, how has that allowed you to adapt to
Yeah.
some of these new tools like TikTok and whatever the next one will be? Because to your
Yeah.
point, they are incredibly powerful. And I think that it can be very hard for people to make that transition. I myself, as a millennial, I struggle with that transition. So I'm curious about
Yeah.
what your experience has been kind of jumping on that train and using those tools.
Yeah. They're first off, they are super, super powerful. But my biggest advice is pick one. Pick one that you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with Facebook, stay with Facebook. If you're comfortable with Instagram, stay with that. TikTok, YouTube, whatever it is, but pick one. You
Mm,
have to pick one, because if you don't and you don't adapt, you will be left behind.
mm,
And there are, old school ways of doing things. And I can say this, especially in my industry for real estate, right? It is like, so people just we have a mixed generation that was a huge amount of realtors coming into the industry right around COVID. I'm one of them. I'm one of them. But and then you have the generation that's before, and so their version of marketing is, you know, mailers and door knocking, and you know, and it just feels ingenuine to a lot of people. And so being able to talk like I'm talking to you, people feel like we're having a conversation. So when you're jumping on the platforms, you can give huge amounts of information that is content value, that is not always about selling, buying, me, about my business, about this. It's more about them and how you're benefiting them and solving a problem for your audience. And that is huge. And so you have to adapt to that and be comfortable. A lot of people will be self-conscious about how they look. I'm sorry, guys, you look how you look. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to look like that in person. People aren't just meeting you over the phone, they're meeting you in person. And so you are you, be comfortable with it, love it, be loving of yourself, and get over that. They don't care about that. They don't care what you look like. Can you provide great value, great service, and you know what you're talking about? Do you offer, you know, content to them that they could take with them and then share with whoever, or you know, utilize that? And so it's so important in this day and age. And it's fun because you get to be silly with it. You get to be yourself. You get to show your other hobbies. You're not just all business. You're like a human. And this day and age, it's more about connecting with each other than it is corporate. And everyone that is in that corporate environment, not to say that corporate businesses are bad, they are not. They're great and they serve its purpose, but it's hard to relate to. And people don't feel like it's so personalized. Like, somebody actually cares about me on the other end of this, whether working in it or using them as a business. And so we're making that shift to this more personalized way of doing business.
No, I think you're so right. And it's interesting because I feel like I'm caught in that transition myself. Slight spotlight on me when I talk about my experience. But no, like, so I got my first job when I was 16, and my second job at the age of 16 was in an office. And so I started working in an office environment at the age of 16, and I very much got comfortable with that corporate mindset of everything's about the brand. You protect the brand. The customers come for the brand. And you're right. Like, it's really just a numbers game in that world. It's a numbers game on what attracts you to that brand. So like you said, there's a real estate brokerage that might buy the billboard on top of the highway, or they may put the sign on the bench, right? But it's really just get that brand name out there so that you remember it and you're like, oh, I need a house, I might as well reach out to this company. Whereas we're moving into this world where, like you said, it's very personal and it's not led by the brand, it's led by value. And that's a really interesting way of, I think, framing the transition of business that we're in. I think it's just a well put point that I myself am trying to get from behind the brand, because I'm all about the brand. But it's like, yeah, but
you are the brand. Yes, but you are the brand. That's the thing. It's no longer a company. Without people, there's no company, right? So you are the brand. And that's why influencers are so big right now in the platforms of Pinterest. Gigantic right now, or even TikTok, where they're talking about what they like. You know what I mean? Like, I drink this because I enjoy this. It's Market Basket, guys, but you know, I plug in there. But you know, I drink this because I enjoy it, and this is what, you know, I do for my daily routine. That is, you are the brand. You are represent. You know what I mean? It's you are the brand, and people want to know about you and your personal life because they want to relate, because we're, especially the last couple of years, we've been so isolated. Everyone is so kind of and it's hard. And I don't know about you, or if this just happens when you get older, and maybe I'm just speaking out of, you know, whatever, but it's hard to connect and relate to people in a real way now. It's like, you know, you try to make eye contact. Oh, good Lord. You know, I feel like I'm an extrovert, introvert. When I get back from being out social, I am so white because I'm like, I'm not used to this. I don't know how to talk to people anymore, relate, you know. it's like
Yes.
we need that. It's important. It's really
Yes.
important.
No, you're spot on. You're so spot on. Um, so on this theme of, personalized business, right?
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about this in the prep call. Like, you're in a business, real estate, that is incredibly personal, right? You are
Mhm.
helping people find, build, design their homes, the most important place on earth for them. Um, for you, like, how much, how do I frame this question? As an entrepreneur and you trying to kind of build up this company, honestly, how exhausting can it be?
Oh gosh,
given
yes.
the fact that you're giving all of yourself to this
Yes.
business, because that personal element of your personal touch is what attracts people to your business. Like, how, like, that's gotta seem draining.
Yes. Are you looking for the word balance? Because there is none. Yeah. There is none. No. And I mean, I'm sure I'll eventually find my flow with it, but it is a lot. And so I'm a kind of person that, like, I'm genuinely trying to help people. I want to see, I'm the underdog person. I want to see everyone succeed. So, which goes back to the childhood thing. I want to help everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where somebody else's problems become your own, and you try to help solve for that, but you have to take yourself out of it. You have a certain job that you're supposed to do, and you are a therapist with these people. You are you'll know their most intimate financial details, and their specific family stuff. Maybe someone's divorced, maybe there was a past that there's a lot of different issues and situations where people are needing to buy a house or needing to sell a house. And it's a lot, and especially having the company be your own, and then you're doing all these other things, administrative and marketing and branding, and being out in the field and being two places at once. Yes, it is very draining, but it doesn't matter, because in the very end, this is what I wanted. I want to help people. This is kind of the purpose that I am fulfilling for my life. It's not just, it's that saying, it's not just my purpose, it's my passion. So I
Yeah.
really do enjoy helping people, because it's so stressful. And my whole branding and my business is that I don't want it to be stressful. I want it to be fun. I want it to be simplified, because there's all this crazy language that is very legal. And,
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to help. I'm not a lawyer, just preferencing, what I mean? I want to help people understand the process and walk away feeling like they had the power to make the decisions. Like, my job is not to tell them what to do. My job is to give them the information as much as I can, so that they can advocate for themselves and say, okay, this is a good choice based on our situation and not. And I will be there to kind of guide them through that process. But ultimately, it's helping people, being able to serve people in a way that really impacts their life. That's what makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah.
And I'm still in my own business and being just starting the brokerage, because I came from one brokerage to another, and so restarting that again. It's finding that balance. And so that's one thing that I'm working on for myself. So it's a good thing to know that if you're out there, you're experiencing this crazy, always working or always being there for other people's families but not your own, or whatever. It's all normal. It's all normal. And when you recognize that, then you can start to find ways to try to improve it, whether it's bringing on someone else to help you mitigate some of that, or creating boundaries and saying, I don't work past 6 o'clock, or, I have this event coming up. I'm not going to be available on this day. I just want to let you know. That setting some boundaries, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't go to this certain region, or whatever. Just trying to work on that, and knowing that's the best that you can do. It
Yeah.
takes time. It takes
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. No, I love the strategy of, like, just kind of working through the kinks of understanding your boundaries. I think the boundaries piece is
Mhm.
incredibly important. Because I would imagine, again, I'm not a real estate broker, but I would
Yeah.
imagine you're you're working through these are really kind of monumental events for people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, there's a demand of you that
Yeah,
can
yeah.
be unbelievable. Like it
Yeah.
could be like, it's like the customer service kind of lesson. It's like you might deal with these calls every single day, but that person has only called once.
Once.
And so
Yes.
making sure that they feel heard and feel, attended to, and you pour into that experience for them, but then also making sure that you have what you need to put your best foot forward. I think that that's a really good point. There's
Yeah.
boundaries, like, all about the
Yeah.
boundaries.
Yeah, yeah. But what you just said was so important too. Treating everyone like it's their very first experience.
Yeah.
And so a lot of us through a lot of our different occupations, we forget that sometimes. Like, oh God, this person's calling again. They're calling because they don't feel comfortable, they don't know, and they need that extra. You'll have that one or two that are definitely they're just okay. You know what I mean? But for the most part, I mean, that's so true. And having that energy, you just got to remind yourself, you know what I mean? This is what you're doing. This is what you want. This is like, you just kind of hyping yourself, being your own hype person so that you
Yeah.
could be a hype person for them, because it should feel fresh every time. It should be exciting and happy every time. Actually am going through something right now where I have half of my family right now is either buying or selling, and they're using me, which yay is it's a big deal in real estate because you will find that your family and friends they won't use you. They'll use and that's for various different reasons. Some people may feel embarrassed of their financial situations that they're going through that may be a little bit, what they think
Right.
is less than, even though it's completely normal. It's completely normal. And they just think that house buying, you need to have this exceptional credit and all this, money saved up and all that, and or not switch jobs, and that's not the case. Every situation is different. Every loan type is different, and so anyhow, so I have my family that has come on, and so they know me as just Jen, you know what I mean? So we can just be a little casual, but sometimes I forget that I may not have sent them something that's exciting that I would have sent a client that I wouldn't have known. And so you got to treat them just as important and
Yeah.
keep the criteria of business the same. So it's just as they get that same experience. So you just expect, okay, because they're my family, they're just going to take what I'm giving them right now. But you have to remember that you still have to create that experience for them because they
Yeah.
also are going to be talking about you. They're like, yeah, don't use my sister. Oh, she's a tree in the butt, but you have
Okay.
to still, and I have to remind myself of that because they're your family and you have this relationship with them, but you still need to make it just as good as you would for a new client or referral kind of coming in. So yeah.
No, that's such a good point, and I'm glad you mentioned and shared that, because on the podcast we've talked about going into business with family, but we haven't
Mm-hmm.
really talked about your customers being your family, right? And
Right.
in many ways, you're right. Like, the just as much as your family might be like, hey, give me that family discount, and they might, not
Yeah.
treat you like they would any other business. The same is the flip side. Like, you may
Same
not
as the
treat them
flip.
like a typical customer. And I think that
Right.
that's such a good piece of advice. It's like, no, give them that experience that they
Mm-hmm.
deserve to have, because they're also going to make those referrals, and it won't just be off of, oh, that's my sister or my cousin or whoever it may be. It will just be like,
Mm-hmm.
I used her and she was incredible. Like,
Right.
that's even more powerful.
Right, exactly. And even if it wasn't for the referral part, it's still they could have chose to gone somewhere else, and
Yeah.
they chose you, and they chose you because they trust you. So you got to make
Yes.
sure you hold that trust and you honor that trust, and you give them exactly what they were looking for. So,
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. That's such a good point. What In real estate, right?
mm-hmm.
It's such a saturated market, right?
I don't
How
know what said this.
I mean, I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but
Yeah, go right
I
ahead.
listen. I know. I listen. I probably have a solid percentage of my network that are in real estate,
Yeah.
and so I might be biased, but I'm curious. How did you go about kind of getting your first customers, and like figuring out what your specific corner of that market would be? I'm just curious, because
Yeah.
again, real estate it might not be saturated, but a lot of people are doing it.
A lot. Okay, I will give you that. A lot of people are doing it. A lot of people are doing it, but there are a gazillion houses out there and a gazillion people that need to buy or sell. So it'll never be super, super like you're never really in direct competition. Like people think that like you're like fighting as realtors, like over houses. We're not. We're not. We're actually helping each other because we all need each other, right? You need both
Mm,
sides of the deal. But going back to your original, how I got my first customer. So let me tell you. So my first client didn't know she was my first client. So if she were to ever have, and she still doesn't until this day, if she were to have asked me, I would have told her, but I'm not going to volunteer that information because I wanted to know her to know. I knew what I was doing. There shouldn't have been any skipping the beat of the way. If I didn't know it, I'd say I get right back to you, ask my broker, figure it out, and go right back to her as if it was my own information. It's that
yeah,
fake
I
it till
love
you
it.
make it because I didn't want her to feel like she was dealing with an amateur, even though I was. And honestly, and so her deal was quite the interesting one. That was a lifelonger. That was a her deal was I got handed when I go out into anything I do, I get the most complex version of it and I learn and I suck it all up. I am telling you. So this first client of mine, I met at an open house. So I was doing an open house with my partner, my business partner, and she had an agent, and she was telling me about her experience about how horrible her agent was because she wasn't returning phone calls. She wasn't answering the questions that she wanted. You could tell that this client was somebody that needed hand holding and was detail oriented and just really wanted to feel sure about her purchase. And so I said, you know what? I can't really help you if you have an agent, but if you decide at any point that she's not working out for you, here's my card. I'm happy to answer any question you have. Next day, she leaves her agent. She comes to me. So I'm like, okay, all right, we're going to do it like this. And so I took her on. We had a deal where we had found the house within the first week. We had made the offer. We had it all set. She had to sell her house in order to buy this house. And that's
Mm,
kind of contingent upon selling. And that's very common in the industry. And so these people that we were buying the house from, they were so excited. So they move out early. They move on. They were waiting for the closing day. The client's sale of her house had fall through the day before our closing. And so it's kind of like that domino effect. And this is where you
yeah.
learn, right? And so we did everything possible to try to make it a win-win situation, a win-win for the people. And mind you, this is at the day before Thanksgiving. So holidays, moving trucks, there's no way. I was ready to get like in my car and move this woman. So
Yeah.
the deal falls through. So because the deal fell through, she now has to stay at her house. The house that she was buying, the sellers of that house now had to put their house back on the market. And I had to learn the lesson of all of that the very first time. And so it really kind of there's so many lessons to learn from that is really try to make it win-win, and you got to do what you got to do. And so if I were to have gone back, I would have had put her up in a hotel and made sure everything worked out for the holiday. You just didn't know.
Right.
But that client ended up buying later on, and similar situation, but worked out this time. And I did put her in a hotel that time and said, you're buying and selling at the same time. And she had cats and all kinds of crazy things. Instead of you worrying about, where you need to go, I'm going to put you in a hotel for the night. I have late checkout. You can put your animals there. That way it could be a stress-free environment. I was not going to let it fall through again for any which reason, you know what I mean? And
Right.
make sure I
Right.
really kind of took care of her and ended up helping her like move out of her house, all kinds of cleaning her place. There's all kinds of things that real estate agents do that we don't put out there because we try to make it look so glamorous, but it is not. There's a lot of hard work in there to make the deal happen and make it so that everybody wins, would I do that for every single client? No, guys, you can't all have a hotel, but in certain situations that it's hard for somebody, who's, lives alone or whatever,
Yeah.
we kind of try to take care of them. But that's how my first client went. And so there were so many different parts of real estate to learn from all of that. So, yeah. And then the question that you asked about the niche, right?
Yeah.
You don't find your niche finds you. So whatever you're getting the most of, you're going to learn those lessons. You're going to become, a professional, very knowledgeable in that one thing. And so my thing was land. For some
Mhm.
reason, land comes to me. Everybody wants to buy and sell land. I don't know what it is, but it's become my forte. So I have learned so many things about land. So if you need to buy or sell your land, JBO Home, New
Like,
Hampshire.
sure.
So so, but that's what I've become very knowledgeable about. And then just the regular, you have your normal niches of sellers and what how to market, especially in this market, because we went from being super high in the market where it was like people were going 40 to $100,000 over the offer price,
Mm,
covering contingencies, which means that, covering appraisals, which means that when you go to finance and you get your house back, your bank will only allow you to lend up until what the house is, what they value it's worth. And so if it's above that, your offer is above that, you are responsible for paying the balance, and people were doing it. And it was
yeah.
crazy because then it sets a new value of houses because it's, consumer directed, right?
Right.
And now interest rates have gone up high to correct inflation. And so it makes it unaffordable in some situations. And so now, sellers are having a little bit more difficult time getting the way over ask now. And so we have to change that and change the direction of that now. And so just got to kind of know what to do. And that all comes with experience, being
Yeah.
out there, learning and talking to each other. So
Yeah, it's fascinating because as you shared that story and you talked about the market, right? I'm this question just popped in my head. It's how much of your time do you have to spend just reading about what's happening in the industry and the market? Because I think, unlike a lot of the guests, I think you might be susceptible to a lot of market things that are out of your control. So, like,
yes.
I'm curious of like how much of your time do you actually have to spend reading economic reports or what's going on in the real estate market in your local area?
Yeah, so it's kind of like it's a daily thing. So you are always watching, and so we have these certain organizations that we're connected to. NARS, ours National Association of Realtors, Realtor. Everyone says realtors, but it's Realtor. Then we have our local associations, and they send out newsletters and economic reports on what is actually happening. And then you should be reading what's happening in the news, what's happening in development, what's happening in your city or towns. Are new apartments going in? Is a new development going in? Is the city trying to improve certain things? Are people moving because of things like the pandemic that happened, right? People weren't, so in my area, our biggest city that I'm local to besides Manchester, New Hampshire, is Boston. So everybody works in Boston, but hardly anybody lives in Boston. Everyone commutes there from up in New Hampshire. So now everyone from Mass, now that they don't need to go to work into Boston, they want to come to New Hampshire because we're live free or die. There's no taxes up here, so they
Yeah.
want to be up here. And so that created a shift because we were getting people from Massachusetts and New York and Rhode Island, and that changed the market too because their house values are much different than our house values are up here. So, the common house in Massachusetts, which is our bordering state, is about 500,000-600,000. Here, it's the median was 250,
Mm.
350, right? And that's a big difference. So people coming up here would just buy out our local buyers. And so every day as an agent, you're hopping on to see what is what is trending for the market. How many houses have gone on market, and how many houses have sold or have been on the market for so many days. And you're constantly looking at that, and you should be because you have buyers that you're trying to find houses for. So you need to kind of see what's going on. So that should be part of your daily routine, is just knowing that and seeing
Yeah.
that, and then your personal experience and talking to your peers. Even though you're your own business, you need to talk to other realtors what they're experiencing and your other mortgage companies what they're going through, and kind of figure out, because everyone's got different types of buyers, so you got to kind of collectively be talking.
At what point did you feel like, all right, I think I've got this thing under control. I think I know what I'm doing. You know, you didn't feel like you were going out of business every month. Like, does that feeling going away? Or have you
That feeling will never go away. And I hope that, no, honestly, I
yeah.
hope it never does, because that's what drives you. You know,
Mm,
it's that saying, it's either inspiration or desperation, right? You're either
yeah.
inspired to be like someone who's at the top, or you need it to happen. And when you get comfortable, it's like being in a relationship, right? Like you look all good, you get yourself when you're in your single life, you're your very best you. Then you get in a relationship and you show them the best version of you, and
Mm,
then you get comfortable, and then you're just you. And then you may gain weight, or you may just kind of not care anymore, or whatever. And then when it starts getting a little weird, then you're like, oh my god, I need to do something again and get
yeah.
myself back into the mojo.
Yeah.
And so the same thing goes for business. It's like you always have to be fearful that it's not going to work out, in a sense, because you need it to work out. So and in the same sense, trust that it's going to work out. So you
Yeah.
have to have, I have that trust that deep down inside, no matter what, there's the golden rule in life, anyways, and I'm digressing, but everything always works out no matter what. It'll
Yeah.
always work itself out. And that is, if you know that and you've experienced it, it is ingrained in you. It'll always work itself out. Even though it seems tough, or it seems like you're turning your wheels, there's a reason why you're turning your wheels. And so, you may have a slow month where you're not seeing the end result. You're not seeing the revenue, but that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're not planting seeds, and you have to plant seeds, whether it's in your structure of your business, like behind the
Mhm.
scenes, getting everything set up, getting everything organized, making sure your taxes are done. You know what I mean? Making sure all those things are like set up and ready to go, or set up systems for your clients so that it's automated, so that when they go through the process, it's less work on you. Somebody has to do that, right? And so
Yeah.
in the downtime, look at it as you're setting that up, because when you go, you go. And so there's not a lot of time to be able to do that. And then things come in waves, and everything's good, 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 good. And you're like, I'm the best. And then things are going to go down. And you're like, it's that zero and hero in the same day. So, or,
Yeah.
the vice versa. And so you just got to trust and know that you will not let yourself fail. You will find a way. You will meet somebody, as long as you get out of your head. And we all are so guilty of this, as being stuck in your own head, that self-talk. Like, there's some times where I'll bring on a new client, right? And we don't have a relationship just yet. And so they're kind of feeling me out, and kind of, they're just, coming on board, and I'm sending them all the things that I need to, and they're silent. It's a couple days, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Maybe they went with somebody else. Maybe they're not interested anymore. Maybe they're not ready. I don't know what's going on. And they're just like, I just had a busy week. And you're like, oh my God. Like, it just goes through your head like that, that you just think that you're doing something wrong, but you're not. And so
Yeah.
you just have to always just know it's gonna work itself out, and that what you just got used to and what you set up, it's going to change. So you can't get too adapted to it. It's gonna change. It has to, because you have to grow. And so as you grow, you're going to come across new situations. There's going to be different expenses. There's going to be different things that you're going to try and not try, and kind of go through. And you have to go through it all. So whatever you're experiencing, just go through it, and just know
Yeah.
at the end, you're gonna do great. And if this doesn't work out this round, I've done this 3 times, guys. So if it doesn't work out this round, it will when you're ready. And it
Yeah.
just preps you for it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's just such sound advice, because yeah, like whatever's supposed to kind of work out in the narrative that's supposed to be built, it will happen, right? Like there's something powerful about hitting it and making it big the first time. There's something equally as
Yeah.
powerful doing it on your 5th try, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of the experience that you need to be successful. And I love the advice of keep planting seeds, because I can
Yeah.
tell you those dry months are hard.
They are very hard. Yes. And I have to say too, as a realtor, it gets like that. Like our whole job based, if anybody's ever curious, the way that we get paid is through commission. And so sometimes I have buyers that have been looking for 3 months, and it's, they want to find the perfect house. You want them to find the perfect house, but that's 3 months of driving back and forth, expenses of getting stuff out, marketing letters out to find people off market who are, to try to have them connect with your buyers. There's all these things that you kind of like put out there. And so it could be months at a time that until you got paid. I mean, the payoff is big, the commissions are big, but you're still paying things as they go. Bills are still going out as they go. So it can be challenging, but
Yeah.
just know that it's going to be okay and adapt your life as so. You know what I mean? Plan on a certain amount. If you have like a savings, pull that out. Know that you have this amount per month. Just basic, live simple. We're all kind of trying to be flashy and but forget about that. That's all ego. Forget that. Forget that doesn't even matter. Go in your basic t-shirts, your basic stuff, and just get out there and just put in the hard work. That's it. Just, the very best things of life come in the most simplest packages. They're not the magic pill. It's the most simplest formula. Just put in the work, just do it. You will get an outcome no matter what you are doing.
No, I love that. I love that. Nothing, what's the saying? Nothing good comes fast, right? And so
Nothing. Yes.
it's a slow build. So okay.
Yes.
So with that,
Can we just talk about that? Can we talk about
sure,
that?
for sure.
The slow build. So that whole concept is so important. So I think that we should really talk about that, because people going out there into business, right? They want the success to be this one thing. When I reach this dollar amount, when I reach this certain milestone, but it's the slow progress, the consistency that is going to make you ultra successful, and successful, whatever that means to you. So if successful means monetary, great. If successful means approval from your family or whatever that you're doing, you know what I mean? Or the support or the status or whatever it is that is it, you're successful, or I just did it. I accomplished this. Go slow. My biggest lesson that I am putting into this turnaround, this time, is taking my time. I am not in a rush to grow. I am not in a rush to try to get as many clients as possible, because I need it to be scaled so that I can put out the best quality possible. And so I can only do that because I'm one person, right? And so I will eventually have other people that'll be assisting my business, but do it in pieces. Don't be in a rush to get there, because you will get there if you stick with it. I promise. Anybody can do anything. I mean, Kanye West is the biggest of this when he's like, I can do, if I wanted to play in the NBA, do you hear him? If I wanted to play in the NBA, I would, because I believe in myself. And it's true. If you believe in yourself, you can do anything. I started as a hobby of like bodybuilding, right? And I was just always athletic, and I was like, I always wanted to be on stage, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And it was slow, and I'd always tell my coach, like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? How do I make this happen faster? And they're like, you don't. Like, nature doesn't happen fast. Nature grows, you know what I mean? And you're an organism. Like, you got to grow into it slowly. It happens over time, over watering, feeding and resting, and going through that whole thing. And so I made it to stage, you know what I mean? And I was so proud of myself, and it was because of just very basic, slow consistency every single time. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And a lot of people are all or nothing. Don't worry about those things. Little pieces, just plug little pieces, and I promise you will get there. Promise.
That's such good advice, because I'm thinking about my own personal experience. Consistency is definitely the name of the game, and I get very hard on myself when I don't hit my definition of consistency. Even though if you look at a 10,000 foot view, you're like, yeah, you're pretty consistent. You just missed a couple days, right? But it's so fascinating, because you talk about not being in a rush, and maybe this is just my corporate kind of management consulting experience kicking in. And I know we talked a little bit about this in a prep call. It's like, as a consultant, you have two jobs: solve the problem. Well, three: solve the problem, present a solution that can scale and solve the problem in the future so it doesn't pop up again, and do it as fast as possible because you're expensive. And so it's been interesting the last few months. I'm trying to unlearn some of those behaviors as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, because even though
Yeah.
I know what good looks like, I know what I want to
Mhm.
work towards. And okay, this is the system that's in place that I'm going to put in place, and this is how we're going to do this. I'm only one person. And,
Mhm.
I do have other people that are helping, but even some of the other people that are helping is like, slow down.
Slow down. Yes.
You're so right, because
Mhm.
it's and maybe this is something I've got to dive into and share more about. But I think that as a consultant, there's some things that I truly have to unlearn to
Yeah.
help me as an entrepreneur, even though in many ways they're an asset, because I know what bigger companies do this and how they do it at scale. It's like, no, but there's a big difference between a company of 0 to 10 people
Yes.
and a company of 10,000 people.
Yep.
Those are
Yep.
two very
And
different places.
there's no comparison there too, because again, it's just you. And so you learning, unlearning, and letting go of those mindsets of what you've been taught, right? You have to reteach yourself this new way and let that in. And it's always resistance. It's
Yeah.
always resistance. And it's so hard to do it. But as you do it, educate your clients about that, about your process. The reason why it's taking longer to do this is because we need to make sure this works first, right? And that
Yeah.
these pieces fit together. Then when those pieces fit together, then we move on to the next phase. And it's so that you don't spend all this money. You feel like I didn't do a good job. You move on to another company, and the same thing happens again. I want you with me for a while. I want to be with you for a while because it's exciting to watch you grow.
Yeah.
And I want to be there. I want to be your consultant for a long period of
Yeah.
time as you go through these different phases, because as you are solving for their problems, they also are doing other things in their company that are changing and evolving or being influenced from outside sources that they can't control. And it trickles. So when you try to put everything all together and you solve it all at once, it's like giving all the goods at once. You don't want to do that because
Yeah.
it's not helpful. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it doesn't keep you in business very long. But
Yeah.
and it's part of that. You want to grow with them because you're going to learn things about their company that's going to help the next company. So
Yeah.
there's things that you're going to see in that. And so just slowing yourself down and knowing that, just educate them as you go. Whenever I do my interior design, it has to be in phases. We have to go through design development because I have to understand the project. And so do you,
Yeah.
as the client, you have to know what you're trying to achieve here. I mean, we can make it
Yeah.
look pretty and all that jazz, but there's actually a form and function that go with this. And then,
Yeah.
from there, once we kind of do that discovery stage, what's next, so yeah, but it is hard unteaching yourself
Yeah.
because it's so ingrained, it's the same way that how we grow up in America is so ingrained. Like, you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you get married, you have kids. And then when you're outside of that, if you don't do it in that order, then you feel like you've missed out. You get that FOMO,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Fear of missing out. Like,
Yeah.
you didn't do this. So what does that mean? Are you a failure?
Right.
I'm, 30 something, high 30s, and I don't have kids and I haven't been married. Does that make me, I chose career. Does that make me like, am I not normal? But it's not. This
Right.
is my path. This is what I chose. This is what feels good to me. So you got to do what feels good for you and your business. That's why you become an entrepreneur, because this is what you wanted for you, and this is how you wanted your clientele to experience you.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you just gotta it's one of those things though. You're always gotta cheerlead yourself on because no one's doing it for you. So you gotta just remind yourself.
You're spot on. So my one question before we jump to some of the concluding questions,
Yeah, sure.
is what would you like Tuesday 5 years from now to look like?
I would love for it to look like I have achieved my development business. I am working and growing, and now I am teaching others how to do it. That's what I would love to show people, kind of the formulas that got me there, to get them on the right track so then they could start their own businesses, because there's nothing more exciting than to see another business thrive.
Yeah.
And I would love to just be putting out, great stuff out there that, what people are looking for. Being a developer, it's just, with mixed with interior design and the construction aspect of your own, when people go to look at houses, they want to see the turnkey. And I know how to do that value
Hmm.
engineering in the most beautiful way, in my opinion. And so that's where I'd like to see myself, that I have gotten there. We are now expanding onto other great things, and just giving back. Once what do they say? Rising tides raises all ships,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
so I think that that's so important, is that once you kind of figure some stuff out, that you share it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, let's get to some quick hitters, but feel free to elaborate or dive
Yeah.
in as much as you want. What are a couple books that you'd recommend to entrepreneurs?
Yes, sure. I would like, sorry, I have to look at a minute. The Universe Has Your Back. Please read
Okay.
it, people. Read it. It has to do about losing yourself, finding yourself again, and finding the reason why you're doing what you're doing. And you really, really need to do that. Gabby Bernstein is the author, and she is amazing. She has other podcasts and YouTube channels, and she's just a great human being. But it just reminds yourself, we've all been in that spot where we've lost ourselves at some point, and you're chasing the comeback of that.
Mhm. I like it. I like it. Um, what question do you think I should ask the next entrepreneur?
Ooh, gosh. I would ask them what they need from their audience. What do they need from their clients? Because I think that that's important too. We always talk about what we offer and what we're doing, but what do we need from them?
Yeah.
And that might help. Just even asking the question, even though it may be rhetorical, may help us understand our own businesses a little bit, because it's just getting that opposite perspective of how we're being perceived, and kind of that back and forth. And I think that that's also important.
I think that's a really good question. And a good exercise. I'm curious if you humor me. What
Yeah.
do your customers need?
Oh gosh. Okay. So if I were to be asking oh gosh, I put me on the spot. That's something I need to think about. Oh gosh, I would just, I would want to know if I'm giving them the kind of, is this what they expected for service? Am I offering them too much or too little?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would kind of want, as far as feedback from them, just some kind of something, I don't even know what that would be. Would that be a survey? Would that be a sit down dinner after the experience? Instead of doing a review, actually kind of just sitting in person with them for the review,
Yeah.
versus getting,
Yeah.
just having it be something that's transactional, and I just, I guess that would be the perspective from what I would need for my clients, and you know, just making sure you're just, you're there for them and covering
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
guess it's that being reassured for that. And
Yeah.
then, maybe asking them just a little bit, maybe I should use this more, is my calendary. I don't know how you say it, but the time blocks of being able to fill in the time. I haven't gotten to it. I feel a bit salesy when I'm like, here, you just fill in your time when you want to see me. It feels like I'm not owning that, but it's helpful for me, because then I can block my time.
Right.
Because a lot of people are at the same time looking at things at the same time. That coordination is quite challenging sometimes. So
Yeah.
if any of that made sense.
No, no, it doesn't. I love the idea of taking your client out to dinner after they've purchased the home because
Mm.
um shout out to Scott. He helped us buy our home. He's incredible. We bought
Hey,
it at the
Scott.
beginning. We bought it at the beginning of the pandemic. And of course it was hard to get together. You couldn't really meet. Like it's kind of funny. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if I've ever shaken Scott's hand, which is a little
Yeah.
weird. But it's funny because every time we text, I'm like, we gotta have you over. We gotta have you over. It just hasn't
Yeah.
happened. And I
Yeah.
think that, I mean, he knows he was amazing. We shared our experience with him, but yeah, I think I like your idea of, hey, let's just kind of go out to dinner and celebrate real quick, and
Mm-hmm.
you have that opportunity to ask those questions. I think is a really smart way. It's a way to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my unsolicited recommendation.
No, I'll take it all. I'll take it all, especially coming from the experience. I'll definitely take it. And
Yeah,
we send out gifts and things like that throughout the
yeah,
year, but it's like I think that personal, especially right after, it's very fresh, and they're willing to give back feedback. So at
yeah.
that point, they could say you did a horrible job, and they already got their house, so they're fine.
And it's also probably exciting because they haven't unpacked all their kitchen stuff, and like, yeah, it'd be nice to
Yes.
just kind of take them out to dinner and just be like, hey, let's celebrate together. That's a really good idea.
Yeah. All right.
Um,
My next client, I'm doing that.
hey, let me know how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay. What type of entrepreneur would you be most interested in hearing on the podcast?
I mean, any entrepreneur that you interview, there's always something to take from, but crypto. I would love to hear the crypto space, especially right now in economics and what's happening with, the banking system, Russia and China and the UK, who just adopted, I think it was September 3rd or 8th, somewhere around there. They're going all crypto. And so what does that mean? What does that mean for us? How does that mean that we're trading things? And, people who don't have crypto and people that don't have computers, what does that mean for them? And I would
Yeah.
just love a whole perspective on the whole money aspect and kind of where we're going with that, because it's interesting, and it's coming.
No, trying to think if there's anyone in my network that I know. I'll have to think about that. There are definitely some
Mm,
financial advisors that I think I can talk to and pick their brain about that. That's a really interesting topic. I would learn a ton because I don't know much about crypto, to be
yes.
honest.
So financial advisors really try to stay away from it, to be honest. And so at least
Right.
mine, and the last that I've talked to, there's one, and when I was picking my financial advisor, the very first question, because I have crypto and I believe in certain ones, and so he was like, yeah, had gone off on a tangent that had to have been like very commercialized, like everybody was saying it, like the
Yeah.
market's crashed, like that type of language, and you're like, no, that's not true. So I said, okay, he's not my guy. And then my new guys that came on, they were like, you know what, we can't speak on that. We can only talk about like real money. And I'm like, oh God. But it's interesting. So you definitely need a crypto person. And through TikTok, there's a whole bunch. So maybe you connect with one of them, who knows?
For sure.
Or anybody listening to the podcast, if you know somebody,
Yeah, I love it.
definitely make a suggestion.
I love it. Well, Jen, before we wrap up, I want you to let people know where they can find you, where you help people find homes. Like, shameless plug. Do it.
Absolutely. Yes. If you guys want to talk all things real estate, you can find me on Sell with JBO. That's Sell with JBO on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And so you can find me there, or you can find me on my website at www.jbohome.com.
Awesome. Jen, this was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was you were my first podcast, so hopefully this came out okay. So I'm very, very excited. And cool gear, guys. This is just for this show, just so you know.
Oh, this was amazing. Thank you so much. If you found this video to be helpful, please like, subscribe, or leave a comment. If you're an entrepreneur and want to share your journey and be helpful to others, please hit us up on our social media channels, or you can shoot us an email at behelpfulpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks. Be helpful.